The greatest filmmaker of all time, Stanley Kubrick, the famed movie director who made films such as 2001: A Space Odyssey, A Clockwork Orange, The Shining, and Eyes Wide Shut, placed symbols and hidden anecdotes into his films that tell a far different story than the films appeared to be saying. In Kubrick's Odyssey, Part 1, Kubrick and Apollo, author and filmmaker, Jay Weidner presents compelling evidence of how Stanley Kubrick directed the Apollo moon landings. He reveals that the film 2001: A Space Odyssey was not only a retelling of Arthur C. Clarke and Stanley Kubrick's novel, but also a research and development project that assisted Kubrick in the creation of the Apollo moon footage. In light of this revelation, Weidner also explores Kubrick's film, The Shining, and shows that this film is, in actuality, the story of Kubrick's personal travails as he secretly worked on the Apollo footage for NASA. Maybe he got killed because he wanted to tell media about this secret. I'm not the one saying no thank you, sir, to speculative conspiracy docs, but I like to see some evidence. We connect everything to the moon landing, from numbers to pieces of art. Jack and Danny are just two sides of Kubrick: the workaholic slave under the secret government moon landing project and the suffering artist. The room 237 represents the 237,000 miles there is to the moon. The Apollo 11 shirt that Danny is wearing is just not a coincidence, and on and on. Most of the picture will happen by the beginning of the next millennium. Although the predictions central to the plot, colonization of the moon, crude interplanetary travel, and artificial intelligence, did not materialize by that date, some of the film's other futuristic elements have indeed been realized. Since its premiere in 1968, the film 2001: A Space Odyssey has been analyzed and interpreted by numerous people, ranging from professional movie critics to amateur writers and science fiction fans. Kubrick encouraged people to explore their own interpretations of the film and refused to explain what really happened in the movie, preferring instead to let audiences embrace their own ideas and theories. In an interview for Rolling Stone magazine, Kubrick said, "On the deepest psychological level, the film's plot symbolizes the search for God, and it finally postulates what is little less than a scientific definition of God. The film revolves around this metaphysical conception, and the realistic hardware and the documentary feelings about everything were necessary in order to undermine your built-in resistance to the poetical concept." What is so great about 2001: A Space Odyssey? Beyond its technical prowess, the film is lauded for its commentary on big themes: technology, AI, extraterrestrial life, human evolution, and more. Reactions to the premieres of A Space Odyssey in Washington, D.C. and New York City in the first week of April 1968 were so negative that Clarke left the New York premiere in tears at the intermission. Some 241 audience walkouts were recorded at the New York screening alone, and the city's leading film critics almost unanimously issued scathingly negative reviews. It seemed clear to everyone that the film was a monumental disaster, but young people flocked to see the film from the first day, and its fortunes quickly reversed. A Space Odyssey ended up becoming the highest-grossing film of 1968, the only time Stanley Kubrick ever achieved such a standing. This explanation will be split up based on how Kubrick split his film up. Section 1. The Dawn of Man. Section 2. Jupiter Mission. Section 3. Jupiter and Beyond the Infinite. Section 1. The Dawn of Man. After the title sequence, the film opens up on Earth, specifically prehistoric Africa, where we are situated near a tribe of animals. We see the apes are curious while sharing with each other, but are also territorial within their own species. The next day, a monolith appears near the apes. The apes erupt with fear. As they start to slowly calm down, they become more and more curious as they all reach to, and eventually touch, the surface of the monolith. The leader ape attacks him with his newfound bone, a tool, and thus, man has tools. In the following scene, the leader ape throws his bone in the air, and the camera follows it up and match cuts to a large missile floating in Earth's orbit, from a bone to a space missile. Now, civilization is far more advanced than at the start of the film. Man can detect strong magnetic fields, fly to the moon, and have the ability to excavate. Having these abilities allows man to find a monolith under the surface of the moon, which we now know to be the second one. Section 2. Jupiter Mission. When NASA noticed the signal emitted by TMA-1, they decided to send a handful of astronauts to Jupiter to discover what exactly the monolith's piercing sound was pointing to. This section does not contain much about monoliths, since its main star is HAL 9000, who, by the end of the section, kills everyone except Dave. Man's tool has just destroyed its creator. HAL is so man-like that it turns into man itself. And, in turn, man destroys the man with the simplest of tools, a screwdriver. Here's how this tool-man dichotomy works. Man creates tool. Man's tool transforms into man, while man transforms into tool. Man destroys tool. Tool destroys man, with tool. Section 3. Jupiter and Beyond the Infinite Man. After the teleportation, Dave and the ship are seen in a neoclassical white room, where he would live his life under observation, while the aliens judged humankind's maturity. And here's Kubrick's explanation of the ending. In a timeless state, his life passes from middle age to senescence to death. He is reborn, an enhanced being, a star child, an angel, a Superman if you like, and returns to Earth prepared for the next leap forward of man's evolutionary destiny. I want to end with a great quote from Kubrick when he was asked to explain the meaning behind the ending, and subsequently, the whole film. They are the areas I prefer not to discuss because they are highly subjective and will differ from viewer to viewer. In this sense, the film becomes anything the viewer sees in it. If the film steers the emotions and penetrates the subconscious of the viewer, if it stimulates, however inchoately, mythological and religious yearnings and impulses, then it has succeeded. What happened at the end of Space Odyssey? A Space Odyssey's ending has been the source of debate for over 50 years. Stanley Kubrick confirmed that. However, Kubrick contradicted this belief in 1980 when he talked to filmmaker Junichi Yao, a documentary that was never released. During the telephone interview, Junichi Yao asked, "People are wondering, what is the meaning of the last scene? Could you give us answers?" Kubrick responded to Yao's question regarding the final scene in A Space Odyssey, where the protagonist Dave Bowman lies in bed saying, "I tried to avoid doing this ever since the picture came out because when you just say the ideas they sound foolish, whereas if they're dramatized one feels it." The director continues, adding, "The idea was supposed to be that he is taken in by godlike entities, creatures of pure energy and intelligence with no shape or form, and they put him in what I suppose you could describe as a human zoo to study him. And his whole life passes from that point on in that room, and he has no sense of time. It just seems to happen as it does in the film." To elaborate on this concept, Kubrick notes that the room was a very deliberately inaccurate replica of French architecture to show that the entities had some idea of what Dave would find comforting and familiar like humans do to animals in Zeus. Concluding his comments about the film's ending, Kubrick says, "When they get finished with him, as happens in so many myths of all cultures in the world, he is transformed into some know of super being and sent back to Earth. It is the pattern of a great deal of mythology. That was what we were trying to suggest."